What was it like working with Helen Zille? There's many different opinions and descriptions about what was she as a colleague, as a leader. That must have been a very interesting journey to build a party from 2% or even less up to it was eventually 20%.
No, certainly.
I think on the 9th or the 8th of October, about 1,500 people were massacred in Darfur.
Yes.
It's what was all over social media.
I think this is going to be the challenge for any government, is that you don't want to be in the bad books of certain of your partners that you have in the world, or you have your bilaterals or multilateral relationship with different countries. And if you take a stance against that country, you may suffer then economic consequences.
Will the DA suffer if it changed its position in terms of criticizing Israel? Would it cost the DA anything?
In Conversation With is proudly sponsored by Africa Cash and Carry, Crown Mines, and shot on location at Cortuba Convention Center.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of In Conversation. Today I am honored to be with His Eminence Sheikh Shahid Esau. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Muhammad Noor. MashaAllah, it's an honor and privilege to be in your company as well.
You're my uncle. I discovered this. I discovered recently.
Alhamdulillah.
And I must declare that. So if the viewer says that I'm a bit too lenient on you, then I must declare what do you guys call a declaration of interest in Parliament?
Yeah, you have to declare your interest. That's correct.
So of course you are you a famous South African parliamentarian, or are you also infamous at some levels, because as many parliamentarians are infamous just by virtue of being a politician and a sheikh?
Well, the territory, it is a very territory that is controversial, and there will be times that there will be challenges in different ways. I think, however, it depends on the individual as a politician. If you stick by your principles and your values, I think that's very important. And then it's a matter of managing those challenges and negotiating that in terms of your values and principles. And I think one doesn't want to compromise one's values and principles. So certain people probably will be more prone to problems. I think, yes, I've had my fair share of challenges, but I've tried to maintain a particular stance on many things. And within the party, of course, alhamdulillah, whatever promotion or whatever election took place, it was with the support of people and not because of my own trying to push a particular agenda or to find the necessary support. I've alhamdulillah got the support from members within the party for the positions that I held. And I think within the Muslim community, one who would also like to uphold the principle, Allah tuzakku anfusakum, and do not promote yourself to any position. And I think that is what, if people want you to be in a leadership position, it should be a natural process and it should be supported by the people. And I think that is a principle I would like to uphold in my life.
Excellent. We just jumped straight into the politics. I must tell the viewers you are referring to the DA.
Oh, at the time, yes. Yes, to the DA, where I served over 20 years. However, I was also, we understand the politics at the time when I came back in 1990 and the change and transformation, and CODESA was under discussion and all the negotiations. And as part of the community and also at the time being part of the MJC, a conscious decision was made that everybody should support a particular party, and that was the ANC at the time, in order to effect that transformation and change that we wanted in the country. So I think in principle we all agreed that there was an absolute need to bring about a change from the apartheid regime to a new dispensation. Yes, I also had a stint at the AMP, the African Muslim Party, where I also served as the what you call a campaign manager at one stage. And of course, later I stepped out of that, and then I was approached also by various parties and discussions and things about politics and the country. And in 1999, then I joined the DP at the time. And fundamentally, the motivation for that was because of the corruption and the ill or the lack of sound governance in the country by the ruling party. And I felt there's a need to balance the politics. So it's important that there should be a check on ruling parties, no matter who is in power. Whatever party is in power, there should be a strong opposition. So if the DA is in power, there should be a strong opposition to balance that power. If the ANC is in power, there should be a strong opposition. And this is how you want to manage your politics in the best interest of your people, that there's not abuse at that high level and that people are always held accountable, and to force transparency to the electorate and people that actually vote for you.
We started so far in front.
Yeah.
That's great. You studied in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, after my matric, I went to Saudi, and
It's in the late 70s, early 80s?
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
I left in 82 via London.
How did one in the early 80s? Early 80s wasn't that far away, but I was still relatively
Yeah, I
native at that
finished
time.
my schooling in 1980, and at the time I was a student of Sheikh Abdul Karim Tawfa, and I continued to work there as well as a teacher, as a administrator, and of course I was teaching in the evening some of the adults, and I applied to different institutions, and with Sheikh's recommendations, eventually King Saud University accepted my application. And then I left in 1982.
Many people from our Muslim community in Cape and Cape Malay community went to Al-Azhar. I don't know if they were, there were some who went to Al-Madinah, like Sheikh Ibrahim Gabriel's, Sheikh Ibrahim Abrams,
Correct.
Sheikh Rafan Abrams and so forth, and other leaders.
Yeah.
I don't know if there were many who went to King Saud at that time. And then when you went, who else went there, and how did people go to King Saud University? That was in Riyadh.
It's in Riyadh. It's actually the capital, and it is the biggest university in Saudi Arabia. At the time, we were about 40,000 students on the campus or the hostels that I stayed in. At one hostel alone, it was about 20,000 students from all over the world. So I think that was, of course, a later development. Medina University, Al Qura, was established before. Fewer students went to Al Qura. Between Medina and Cairo, you would find the majority would have gone to Cairo, and then you'll find a lot of students went to Medina. The doors opened in King Saud, and we applied. And of course, alhamdulillah, the acceptance came from them first, so we took the opportunity.
Which other prominent scholars were there today?
If we look at Professor Muhammad Harun was a student there. We're looking at also Dr. Tahir Situtu from the Eastern Cape, and he was president of the MYM at one stage as well. Then we have Muhammad, the one that is also well known in Joburg that's been teaching. We got Murshid Davids that was also there. We have Vauda, Ahmad Vauda was there. Arshad Amot was there. Faisal Dadabai was there. In the Cape, we had also Ismail Dolly was there. And then we had, the first part was Sheikh Adil Davids, who's now in Chatsworth. He started his learning at King Saud, and then, of course, transferred later to Usuluddin, and he specialized in Hadith. He went to Jamiat al-Imam Muhammad bin Saud. Murshid also went over to Jamiat al-Imam Muhammad bin Saud. So, and then there's, of course, the other students that we have in Cape Town, like Shahid Suleiman. Shahid Suleiman finished his studies there, his undergraduate, and then he continued his master's in Jordan. So, Noor Davids, from Kensington originally, the Imam formerly of the Masjid in the Retreat. He was the Imam for a long time. And his brother Uthman also came for studies.
MashaAllah on your memory.
So, alhamdulillah. So there were quite a number of students from all over South Africa that came.
Before I get into some of the nitty-gritties, we've conducted a few interviews with a few prominent Muslim ulama and so forth in South Africa. I find it interesting that there's a diversity in the textures and streams of of knowledge and experience that the local ulama went to. Like some people went to Deoband, some people went to Karachi, some people went to King Saud, to Medina, to Cairo. What value did that add to Islam in South Africa? These different, just these different worldviews, these different perspectives, these different streams of Islam. What is your observation of?
I think in the Western Cape and the MJC in particular, it's an organization that keeps its doors open to all students from different backgrounds and different institutions. And that was one of the strengths, the strengths of the MJC, is that they accommodated. Unlike the other parts of South Africa, where a large majority of people went to study in the subcontinent, in India and Pakistan and so, and they come out from the Darul Uloom either from the Brailwi following or from the Deoband following. So then you had the issues up there which even resulted in some fighting. There was a shooting at one stage also that took place. So those were the extremes between Brailwi and Deobandi from the subcontinent, that it was imported and became a problem in South Africa. Cape Town, we have tried to avoid all of that, and we try to find synergy and to accommodate people and have that open discussion. So if you look at the MJC and its membership historically, people that have come from Cairo, from Al-Azhar University, people that have come from Makkah, Qura, people that came from those who studied not only at Qura but also in the Haram. From like Sheikh Maliki's student, people that studied under that. Then Solate, those are like Sheikh Amin Fakir. So we have those, and then of course we got people that came from like Maulana Yusuf Karan, that came from the Deoband. Then we have people like Maulana Ihsan Hendricks that came from Lucknow, from that's also different. So I think the MJC has thrived upon diversity and to be able to share and have that open discussion. But essentially it was also based on the fiqh of Shafi'i and Hanafi. Later we find the development now with the African community, when Islam was spreading within the African, they decided to adopt for themselves the Maliki madhab.
Oh, really?
So to a large extent, yes, that has become, and at this moment, also they've had the Shura Council, which is also branches within the provinces, but essentially it's for the black ulama. And I think that is part of the evolution, that they wanted to find themselves and create
They
a platform.
wanted to find themselves, or they had no option but to find themselves?
Well, there's been challenges in different ways. Probably you would be aware of it at the time. There's also sometimes the prejudice that prevailed before. Of course, we have been critical of those things. As ulama, we expect everybody to be treated the same, regardless of the community you come from. And if you have learned, you have learned. And you have the right to contribute to that institution and to serve that institution in any capacity. So in Cape Town, yes, we had like Sheikh Ismail Gwamani, who was part of the executive for many, many years. And Sheikh Jamil was there also.
They're both from Medina?
Yes. They studied in Medina.
They're my seniors, but we crossed paths.
And then you have others that have gone to other institutions of learning. But I think what happened in 1993, there was a move by Sheikh Nazim Muhammad to lobby support in the country from all the different jamiat and all the ulama fraternities to form a national body, an umbrella body, which is known as the United Ulama Council of South Africa. And alhamdulillah, I was asked to facilitate the national conference in George at the time in 1993. And that culminated when everybody from all the different fraternities, ulama fraternities, came together and they agreed and they formed the United Ulama Council of South Africa. So that umbrella body from 1993 is still there, and I served as its first Secretary General. It's been taken over now by Maulana Yusuf Patel. He's now been serving very long as the excellent person, doing an extremely good job as the Secretary General of the United Ulama Council. At the time, because of the differences between the Brailwi and the Deobandi, the agreement was that the MJC would serve as the president of the organization. So that both parties would then agree that we can work together, but under that leadership of the MJC. Now I think there is a call. We're looking at 1993, 94, up till now. We're talking about 30 years. I think the call is now to say, yes, I think we are mature enough and we've reached a stage that we'd like to have the leadership rotated. Not only the MJC, but the others should also be allowed to take leadership.
Are these real discussions that have taken place?
Yes.
Or is this just like
No,
your
real
interpretation of what's
No,
happening?
real discussions that have taken place.
Like real meetings?
Yeah,
Like formal meetings, I mean.
formal meetings,
formal.
discussion at the highest level.
And is prepared for what? Are we feeling more confident now? Is it that the community are too busy in TikTok and these and don't care anymore, or is it that people are?
No,
more,
I think it's important
people
for the
more
South
relaxed?
African context that we do not bring the problems from other countries to our country. And I think if we are mature enough to understand and to be able to accommodate diversity, then we should say that if we basically elect a leader, that we should also pledge that allegiance. The understanding is quite clear. I mean, it's the organization is an umbrella body. It does not impose. If the Deobandi and the Jamiat in their own areas want to issue a fatwa, that fatwa will be relevant for that community that they issue it. The MJC want to issue it for the community they want to, there would be no problem. So wherever there is synergy and there is agreement, a national fatwa can be issued. And I think they've also looked at the issue of the Hilal. They've come to an agreement that there will be one. So there's a national Hilal committee and they make the decision when it will be Ramadan, when it's the monthly moon sighted. They come to that agreement every month and that notice is given to the whole country. That has gone across the border, but it has not come back because some of the members have not yet adopted the whole SADC region that you take guidance from another. And that is also part of the discussion and development. We should be able to trust other authorities.
Is that happening at an official,
Yes,
real meeting?
correct. These are the
Like formal. Is this what happens in these ulama councils? Real meetings where it's minuted and people are actually following up? Because sometimes it seems like these are informal things,
No,
I mean, you don't understand that
Yeah.
that our Islamic organizations, for an example, when I did some research on you, desktop research, we can go to parliament.co.za and I can see this is the committee and whichever committee are the meetings,
see all the
etc.,
minutes.
etc. You can even see the salary of the President of America on the White House website.
everything is available.
Right. But when it comes to Islamic organizations, and I'm not accusing them of not being transparent. I'm just saying the access to information. We really don't know what happens in these organizations. Am I right, or is it in terms of the public? If you go to a website or you go to Twitter or something, they're giving you a hadith and we saw the moon, we didn't see the moon, and there's nothing. It's not well documented. So when you say that it's been held in meetings, I'm trying to understand that we mean a proper formal meeting happened, and people are speaking about these things in the
In
meeting.
social media, you'll probably see there is that type of to and fro and debate and discussion. But those elements or those particular debates are also taken to a formal meeting where the discussion takes place. And I think it's important that when we want to evolve and to be more inclusive of everybody and also to be considerate, just by virtue of saying that we only hold to a South African view of when the Hilal is sighted, it will apply to South Africa. And if you want to adopt it in SADC region, you can follow us. But if it's the other way around, then there were some cases, yes, genuine cases, when it was investigated about the witnesses, etc., and people were not satisfied with what was said. They then abstained and said, look, we would rather not go with that view because after our investigation. And that is fair. But if there is no reason, then why should we not adopt it? And I think this is going forward. We will also give mutual respect to one another. You have authorities in different countries, and we would like to work together. So
these discussions are happening.
Yes.
At the real level, alhamdulillah. No, I mean, that's very important for South African Muslims or your stakeholders to know that the ulama are tackling these issues for the next generation. It's like Monabam, when it's Ramadan time, I feel very sorry for him. And I told him this one, everything, because every Ramadan has to do the explanation.
Yeah.
The historical explanation. I think I already know it off by heart by now. So I didn't want to get into the Hilal, but I think the issue is Islamic institutions, you mentioned UUCSA, real discussions happen about real issues.
Right.
and these are there's a level of formality in that.
They will focus on national issues like your Muslim personal law, and that has been driven by UUCSA for many years. Of course, we had our discussions in the MGC, in the Jamiat, etc. But nationally, it's the UUCSA that takes that responsibility to drive it. So a lot of research, and also I was part of the commission initially when we started off in 1994. After South Africa got a new dispensation, new government, etc., the MGC sent a delegation. Of course, Imam Hassan was part of it. Fakir was part of it.
Hassan Solomon.
Solomon.
Allah.
I was taken with as the youngest one, but my job was probably to do all the writing and whatever they needed. So, went to the different countries like Indonesia, like Malaysia, like Brunei, to Singapore, to collect all the necessary information and how they actually apply Muslim personal law in that context.
You went to all the Shafi'i countries?
Of course, because we come from the Shafi'i in Cape Town, so that is probably why we would look in that direction. But of course, we also get information from India, because India is quite a well-established minority, and they also have Islamic personal law, and that's been legislated and is being practiced in the country.
As a parliamentarian, someone who experiences democracy, secularism at its most profound level and meaning in a parliament, in elections and so forth. What is your assessment of when we talk about democracy? I always think about this thing that is, the biggest democracy in the world is India. With more than 100 million Muslims in it. The second largest democracy is Indonesia, that has more than 260 million Muslims. And Muslims and democracy. So this, there's always, democracy is not for Islam, it's not for Muslims, it's not for Arabs. Arabs aren't mature enough for democracy, etc. What Islam and democracy, Muslims and minorities, Muslims and democracies, etc. What's your thoughts on this?
I think democracy is a very relevant or relative term, and it's applied in different ways. So democracy is, if you look at democracy in the West, in the US, how they practice democracy.
We always refer to America and that is the West, but our constitution and democracy here, it's largely based on democracies.
Yes,
influence on democracies that are more liberal and more updated than the Americans. Right? America is quite outdated in its constitution and its amendments compared to the democracies that inspire us.
South Africa opened itself to that, and they pride themselves on the constitution. But democracy, it's a very relative term, and how you apply it. And I think there's abuses also that take place in the name of democracy. One of the areas that is normally challenged for different reasons is the issue of public participation, where it is legislated that there must be public participation. There must be input from the electorate. The public must have a say in all matters, in legislation. The forums must be created where they can actually attend, where they can actually comment. There's, of course, what we call IPs and APs, interested parties and affected parties. So there's lots of legislation from local government right up to national government that needs to be observed. However, serving in parliament and government for 20 years in all the different spheres of government, you find that sometimes there's expediency that takes place, where a notice is put into a newspaper and people may not all buy the newspaper. So how many people know about it? Or it is done at the end of the year, when people are on holiday, etc., and a notice goes out.
I found some very interesting signatures of the president in government gazettes that come out the day before Christmas.
Yeah, unfortunately. Those are the things.
It seems like you know some of the ones I'm talking about.
Those are issues that question the whole concept of democracy. Is this really being true to your people, that you've been elected by your people and that your people have a say in your affairs? Or the people elect you and then you decide?
Is Islam compatible with democracy? In the broader term of whatever, not to have democracy, but in voting, legislation, will of the people, where does Islam fit into this?
I think as Muslims, of course, there are different models. I think if we look at Nizam in Islam, the system of politics, there would be different models. If you look at the Muslim world, there's not one particular model that is being followed. So people would have different approaches and different motivations. And also historically, if you look at the Khulafa Rashidin, radiallahu anhum, and of course how they applied it, where people were basically identified as leaders to take over. The other one was Ahlul Sufa. There was a group of people that nominated a person to lead. So there's different, and then later you went in, it was also issue of succession, where it became Muawiyah, of course, the Umayyads. Then you have the Abbasids, and those type of things, where it becomes succession in terms of your lineage. So yes, we can go back and say if Nabi Sulaiman and Nabi Dawud, it was also kingdoms. And of course,
absolute monarchs.
Yeah, absolute monarchs. But they must be at the bottom. You must be able to do justice and take care of your people as they should be taken care of. And there should not be nepotism and discrimination, etc. So the elements that make it up, we of course live in a secular democracy, which is where Islam needs to be practiced in that context. So this brings, of course, the issue, how do we function? And Muslims are all over the world. They have to function in all different contexts. If they can kill China, it's that type of communism that they have to function under. If it's going to be capitalism, if it's going to be socialism, whatever system they find themselves in, if they are not the ruling party or the majority in the country, then even where there are Muslim majorities, we find that there is not Islamic law per se, but there's also a mix. Like Egypt has adopted, also you find there's laws that came from France, from the British, from the Italian, that they've used in the system, legal system. So it's not been purely Islamic as such. And these are many things.
But the Egyptian constitution has interesting few phrases which refer to that Islam, and I'm paraphrasing, remains the superior religion or superior system, something that in the country, in the constitution,
because it's a majority Muslim country.
Yes, and Kuwait also.
They would have the same.
In the
Saudi would have the same.
Saudi doesn't say Islam. Saudi, I think, says Quran and Sunnah. You know, the others say Islam.
Yes.
It's very interesting how in the constitution.
So I think in our context, we will also have to look at, yes, we have to function within that particular society, and how best can we practice Islam. And I think this is where there must be ijtihad made, and that's why the whole issue like Sheikh Qaradawi has come with this fiqh al-muwatana, fiqh of citizenship. Wherever you are, how do you apply that fiqh of Islam within your context? And I think that's very important. And fiqh of minorities, aqaliyat, these are things that have now been researched and being discussed at length, how Muslims can function as very positive and productive citizens of any country and can work within the system. And I think this is wherever they find themselves, and we need to apply our mind and, of course, see how we can apply the law. One of the challenges that we have currently is, yes, we've got freedoms in South Africa. We have the madrasa system. We got the liberty to practice and to introduce our books that we prescribe. However, when you go to the school system, the books are prescribed by the state. So that does not always comply to all our Islamic values. Some of those teachings, which is prescribed by the state, of course, contradicts Islam. So within our context, the only way you have to deal with that at this stage is to be able to educate and create greater awareness for your particular community and your children that this is where Islam differs from the state or from that particular secularism that they're promoting. Because South Africa is secular. It doesn't prescribe to any religion, although it allows equality of religions, because all religions are treated, they're accommodated within the system, and they're given rights. So I think we are using those rights, linguistic, we call it linguistic, religious, and cultural rights that we use in terms of the constitution. So we use that to find our space within the country.
What is our space in the country?
We have to be part of South Africa.
Do you think we're part of South Africa enough?
Well, that is always a continuous evolution that takes place because...
Are you happy? I mean, you are Muslim. You have been in the Muslim structures for almost more than 30 years, almost 40 years now. So if anyone has a good eye, continuously...
Yeah, I think we've done extremely well. And because I think historically, Muslims have always been part of the liberation struggle and the movements. So when there was a new dispensation, a new government, these movements or political movements became the leadership and they were running the new government. So Muslims were part of that. So I think that is a very important thing, that we are seen to be part of the struggle. We are seen as part of the development of a new South Africa. And I think that is in our favor, that we have been part of the entire process. And historically, we know that the suffering we went through, and other South Africans know that, as our forefathers came from Indonesia and from other parts, whether it's the subcontinent and others that have come here, and they were put into slavery, and they were also the religious exiles, and those that did have senior positions or leadership positions they were exiled to South Africa because they created a problem. They were rising up against colonialism in that country. So yes, when we came to Cape Town, we also had our own challenges. Our freedoms were seriously constrained. You were not even allowed to propagate Islam, and there was a law that said that if you should do that, there will be capital punishment. You will actually be you'll be killed, and others will be locked up and they're isolated. That's why sometimes we find of the karamats that you find on Robben Island, long before, because people were afraid, the colonialists, that these people of influence, of knowledge and learning and leaders that came from the country, that they should not have an impact on the local people. But Allah is the one that determines that. And we find at one stage that the Muslim community in the Cape became a third. And in Cape Town itself, they became majority. So Islam spread amongst the slavery, and it was seen as the alternative to freedom. The slavery they had, and if they adopted Islam, there was a different life. And Islam still offers that to the world. And I think Palestine is now one of the biggest da'wah, according to Islam, that we've ever seen. That people can see Islam in real life, and how it is demonstrated by a people. And so many have accepted and are reading Quran. This has been, yes, it's a suffering that the Palestinians are going through, but the impact it had, or it has still up to now, in the whole world, everybody is aware of it. Everybody wants to know, what is this Islam about? Who are these people? Why do they have this attitude towards all these difficulties? And the contentment that they have, even though they suffer the worst of suffering. So I think Allah in His wisdom, infinite wisdom, and knowing the situation, yes, we cannot comprehend it. We know it's a difficult time. But at the same time, Islam has grown in leaps and bounds. So I think those are things which is important given our context, that we have to work within this context. Otherwise, if you're not part of South Africa, how do you live in South Africa? It's going to be a hostile situation, or you're always going to be, fighting with other people. If you're not considered yourself as a South African, then people say, then why don't you leave?
Yeah, on that point of democracy, I believe that South African Muslims are decades ahead of the counterparts in the other diasporas. When in the early 90s, we had Muslim ministers, Muslim deputy ministers, parliamentarians, etc. Yeah. When I think of what's happening in Europe, what's happening in America, now and then you see there's one Muslim or one Somali or one Arab guy who became a mayor, one lady with hijab who became a parliamentarian somewhere, and this thing goes
Australia.
It goes all over the world. But in South Africa, we had senior ministers, not backbenchers. We had senior ministers ministering the presidency, the kind of Minister Minister Patel, the Pahats, Minister Surti, and so forth, Minister of Continuous Development.
100%.
And people like yourself, who was a speaker of the province.
Yeah.
So we've had Muslims who were in senior positions in government
Alhamdulillah.
very early. Do we ever export that experience to other Muslim communities, to other Muslim diasporas? Do we talk to them as the engagement is there?
I think that does take place. I mean, we do travel as part of our duties and responsibilities is to also deal with international relations. So also what we call international best practice. So there are normally trips organized once a year to a different country and to share your best practices.
But from the perspective of Muslims in
And
the diaspora,
we do get those opportunities when we meet with other Muslims in other countries. Then they would like to know, what is your experience in South Africa? And we got a long experience from the time of the struggle, from government, and Muslims serve in all levels of society, from the street sweeper right up to the advisor of the president. And even at one stage, I mean, if we look at the ministers that were there and also acting presidents in the past, Muslims were serving in that. Up till today, in all the ministries, in all departments of government, in all sectors of society, no matter what sector, if it is law or it is accounting or whether it is medicine, Muslims have made their mark. And they have contributed and still continue. And I think if you look at local politics, how many Muslims have become councillors. So I think it's important that, and the policy of the MJC is that we should vote, we should be involved in politics, but that is your discretion. Unless the party is diametrically opposed to Islam, then of course you're not encouraged to join that. But the policy is very open to say that, yes, you can vote for the party you want, and you can serve and to be part of this country and to make your contribution. Because when you have a government behind you and you've got a person that has the interests of the community at heart and becomes a servant of the community, what we call servant leadership, then the resources that are allocated can be used effectively to help communities. Of course, we find those that abuse those resources from government, and all the money that actually comes to government is taxes, but it's supposed to be used effectively for the needs of the community. So if you have the right people in the right places, they have access to these resources to serve the community. And it happens where you have good people, you will see the impact it has on the community.
In conversation with Sheikh Shahid Esau, 20 years experience as a South African politician. We'll be back after this break.
In Conversation With is proudly sponsored by Africa Cash and Carry, Crown Mines.
In conversation with Sheikh Shahid Esau. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Welcome back. Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Fadilat Sheikh, you are one of the few scholars in South Africa by virtue of your education and by virtue of your profession as being an official member of the MJC, who's also a politician by trade, in that you were part of a political party of the Democratic Alliance for 20 years?
20 years.
20 years. Tell us about that journey. Most Muslim leadership were part of the ANC, are part of the ANC, the PAC. That's the story, and that's the narrative, and it was their path. How did your path get you into the Democratic Alliance?
I think historically, talking about my youth as well, is that when you get involved with the community, and I started at a young age at about 14 when I joined the Ikhwania youth movement, part of the MSA and MYM from 16 years old, that was then at grade 10. And of course, studied under Sheikh Tawfa from grade 10 until 82. That was in 1978. And then also teaching at the madrasa, establishing the Shukr Mubin madrasa, running the youth affairs, of course, Sami would know the tuition that we arrange as support classes for our young at the primary school and high school in maths and English and science and so. And then, of course, during those years, I was also fortunate, but also very young, that I accompanied my brother-in-law, Alawi. He passed on now, Adarhamu. And he was one of the students of the group at Stehman Road under Abu Bakr Fakir, that wrote the book, Manual of Salah and Sawm and Siyam. So he then went over and he finished his doctorate. He was part of the group that also retranslated the Quran while they were in Jeddah.
I was fortunate enough to have met him.
Well, you've met.
I mean, I was a teenager when I met him.
Mashallah. So he was very influential at the time. I was very young, from 14, 15. I was already going to their halaqat to listen to their discussions. They had a weekly halaqa. And also Ahmad Qasim joined there, Allah Rahamu. He also came. and that was part of the SASA, that was the South African Students Association. And of course, they all had links with the PAC as well. So the exposure was that time already, they were speaking quite openly and addressing the youth also at UCT about the inviolable human rights and inalienable rights of people, and of course opposing the apartheid system. And that's why quite a number of them also left the country. So yes, I was exposed to that type of dialogue and discussion, and at a very young age. And of course, being part of, I was fortunate to become also the Amir of the MSA for schools in the Western Cape. So we used to arrange the MSAs at high schools, and of course have halaqat to study Islam, Quran and Hadith, and to read books. And the books that we read were all also politically motivated, like the Maududi, like we're talking about Hassan al-Banna, we speak about Shariati, we speak about Sayyid Qutb. All those books we were reading extensively, milestones, and so trying to read and understand and to make it part of your system, because we were opposed to apartheid, and that was the ethos and the environment that we were in. So it was very radical in that sense, where you're opposed to a system that denies your right and discriminates against you because of your color.
Was that the, sorry to interject, but for capturing history, was that the outlook of mainstream ulama bodies in the 80s? No. You say that for record of history, as someone who witnessed that history.
I do know that members of MGC, that spoke out about these matters. We know even a member, if you look at Imam Abdullah Harun, Allah. So Shahid Imam Abdullah Harun, of course, was one of those exceptional individuals, but not everybody had that.
Was there a formal position, unset position?
Of course, they did take a position. When we discussed the politics, we know that members of the MGC were involved and were in touch with the different movements, whether it's the PAC, whether it's ANC and things, they were involved. Yes, and we supported the liberation movement.
Those who did not want to get involved, was that a conservative decision in South Africa at that time?
Yes, I think
that said, protect Islam, protect Muslims, don't get involved in this. We have our mosques. Although it sounds very traditional, but if I'm thinking in the sense that Islam was preserved and Islam made it very strongly through apartheid. Islam, when people like yourself were busy with the liberation movement, there had to be people who were doing something else, because when you came into post 94, you still found mosques, you still found people going to madaris, you still found Islam working halal, etc. and moon sighting and that, right? So
there was conservatism, to be honest. I think as the youth, yes, we were very critical of the ulama at the time, because who
in the ulama did the youth? And this is not in disrespect. This is just reflecting back on
generally
on
there was this lack of involvement and lack of speaking out against apartheid, and I think people had their own fears, etc. But from the youth that we were part of, the MSA, the high schools, the universities and things, we wanted people to stand up. We wanted leaders to take that role and to show leadership and to be critical and to speak out.
As a leader today, when you look back at the decision that those who sat in the seats before you in the 80s, do you understand their point of view today?
Yes, I understand, but I also don't want to understand, because I believe that what was their point of view? Look, it was a matter of.
I think it is probably, if I look at the results of it, as much as we don't like what it was, we have Islam today, and those people who made a type of sacrifice in what they believed was to preserve. Allah Alam, most of them have passed away. And that's why I think this conversation, because you witness history.
That is correct. That was the view, that they don't want to get involved. They don't want to, because out of fear, one. Secondly, what would the impact be on the community? Would it cause a problem for Muslims and currently the benefits or the freedoms that they have under apartheid to still practice Islam in some way? Yes, we were not happy with that approach. And of course, from the few that spoke out, Those were the people that we supported, and that's why I'm speaking about Bakr Fakir them, that yes, we were very much inclined to that group as well because of the view that they've taken on the matter and being outspoken about it. So I think there was this issue between the youth at the time, and you can speak to any youth of the 80s and 70s about that concern, and everybody would give you the same message.
But there's something else also in this. I find it interesting that the Muslim community is not the only community that had more than one strategy on how to deal with apartheid. Late Chief Dr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who passed away a few months ago, he had a different strategy on how to deal with apartheid. And I think it's very interesting that, they say the conqueror, the victor writes history. And ANC, being the conqueror and the victor of 1994, writes a history of accusing anyone who did not follow the ANC's, what I call strategy, as being traitors, etc. He was a leader. Mongopi, these guys were leaders. Everyone, and it's easy to write a narrative that says these people are traitors. The ulama, they were traitors. They didn't know what they were doing, etc. It's more or less in the same. But there's also, could it be that different people with different priorities, different responsibilities to the people, different interpretations of their world, develop different strategies, which doesn't necessarily, there's a soul question, is there more than one right, correct, right? No. So it's highly philosophical, but as a witness of history, I throw it back to you.
If you look at IFP, of course, it's very controversial, that history, and also the threat that because the Zulu tribe was used. And I think Madiba, in his wisdom, decided to have a trade-off. And of course, we know he became a minister, and to incorporate them into the transition that had to take place. So the IFP came on board because the IFP wanted to use their numbers to also push their own particular agenda. So yes, there's a history to that, what happened. And you find that plays out even later in years. You still have some of those tensions that still prevail.
But the idea is that different people had strategies on how to deal with different communities.
Yeah, of course, we will not agree, and they would have their approach to it. The same thing if you look at Buthelezi and others, they've been part of the Bantustans. Yet, the ruling party, at the ANC at the time, of course, tried to accommodate them, and they became members of parliament. And those from traditional houses, there's a law that governs now traditional houses, and they've also been drawn into the system where, yes, the chief gets a monthly salary, but they're part of South Africa. They're not seen separately.
Yes, of course.
So I think that is probably the trade-offs have to go. It's politics.
Were there trade-offs in the Muslim community as we got into democracy now? Was the finger pointing like, now there's democracy, where are you? Ulama who didn't believe in this democracy or who supported the apartheid. I mean, it must have been a very tense, or like we told you so.
There's been those comments been made, but I think we have to move on. The issue is that
I'm trying to recall history.
Their reservations, and yes, people will be critical of those in the past that were not very supportive of the struggle or came out openly for it. And yes, so there will be some blame apportioned to that. History will speak for itself. So the issue is we have moved on.
But history speaks through the witnesses like yourself.
Of course. So yes, we were critical of individuals that somewhat collaborated or somewhat did not participate in this.
This is where it comes. That word you used. That it's very often when someone does not necessarily agree or respond in the way in which, for example, someone like yourself would respond to apartheid, then the collaboration accusation automatically follows.
Not necessarily. I think we would be discerning in that. Yes, there are people that are conservative. Yes.
I mean, I say you. I mean the.
Yes, I wouldn't make
the groups. The groups of
that people, because they don't participate. No. I don't think you can make a blanket statement.
Okay.
But there were those that were clearly working with government at the time, and those who supported some. Yes, others were just sitting back and saying, no, we're not taking this step. We're not going to be that critical. We're not going to participate in activities, anti-apartheid activities and things. So those people have their own reservations and their own conservatism. However, others that actively participated, yes, of course, those people, we don't have a good view of that.
How did you decide then to end up in the Democratic Alliance?
As I mentioned earlier, in the late 90s, we had the issue of the massive scandal of the arms deal.
Okay.
Which Patricia de Lille, of course, was the main leader of opposing that. And I think after Madiba's term of office as president, he served the first term of presidency, and then only one term, and he stepped down. And it was a very good example in terms of you don't hold on to power. And of course, we have a constitution that limits it to 2 terms only. But it was very clear that there were serious problems within the ruling party, and there was abuse. Whether you call it the black empowerment.
We view the early 2000s as the golden years. And you say that in the early 2000s, you're giving a very grim description of it.
That was one of the main reasons that I joined the opposition, is that I was not happy with what is happening because I don't believe it was sound governance. It was abuse that's taking place, and that the taxes of the people have been used and abused by those in power, and that the moral high ground that existed before the dispensation change, that moral high ground has changed. And that is what is happening even up till today. The issue is, yes, you're a liberation movement, but what happened over time? Are you still the same movement with those values? No. And I think the members of the ANC are very open about it, that this is not the same ANC.
Changing the movement from the inside?
Well, that is always an attempt that people make.
I mean, at that time, did you think, let me go into the ANC and we can do the change be part of the change from the inside?
And no, I just believe that at the time, look, you can speak out against these things, but I believe a balance of power is important. So that's why I said, look, I need to make a commitment that I'm going to be part of opposition to balance power, to address issues and that's what I've done. While I was in Parliament in the opposition, I would definitely raise all the questions and interrogate all the issues of irregularity, unauthorized expenditure, wasteful expenditure, and that is what we practiced. So that was very important for us to hold government accountable.
Were you in an official position in the MJC at that time when you joined, or did that happen later?
Yes, I was deputy president.
With deputy president, who was your president at that year? Sheikh Ibrahim?
Sheikh Nazim was the first, and then Sheikh Ibrahim after that.
You served under Sheikh Nazim?
Yeah, and then I served under
For history, tell us about Sheikh Nazim, Allah yarhamu. I once had actually a 3-hour interview with him.
MashaAllah.
And it's recorded in a book.
Alhamdulillah.
And I'll try to get you a copy of that. And off camera, I'll tell you some of the things he said. What a charismatic man, I must tell you.
No, alhamdulillah.
But what was it like working for him?
I think
deputy president.
In his wisdom also, we just came back from our studies, graduated, and if you know the group that graduated in 1987, Sheikh Arfan and Sheikh Ibrahim and Sheikh Ibrahim. So there's a number of them that came. And I stayed on. I completed postgrad, of course, in 1990. And then I came back. So all of us were drawn in by Sheikh Nazim, and we were encouraged to participate. And of course, we established the Darul Arqam School, the ICOSA.
Did he view this new generation of young Muslims
Yes.
as this is the next step?
That is absolutely.
Did he have that type of vision?
He had that vision, and that he was driving at.
Because where was Sheikh Abu Bakr Najjar at this time?
No, Sheikh Abu Bakr Najjar then, of course...
went to Ashura.
No, he started ICSA.
Sorry, ICSA. Excuse me, yeah. ICSA.
I think that was another matter, political issue, where the changeover happened, where Sheikh Nazim became president, and Sheikh Abu Bakr Najjar was the president. Allah yarhamu. So that was another political issue in the history of the organization.
We'll have a separate discussion on that.
That's a separate discussion.
But I think it's very important to recognize these pioneers,
Right.
And keeping their names in the history alive.
And that's why Sheikh Abu Bakr Najjar also is an icon in South Africa.
I met him as well.
MashaAllah.
And offline, I will tell you some of the stories. I was a young man with my dad. And
so
I met
I
some of
think
these ulama.
In his wisdom, he of course tried to position and to get people involved in all the structures. And we all got involved in establishing the institutions. We also started running the organization, its administration. And that's how we got into this from the beginning, very actively involved in all the activities of the MJC. And of course, that time, because we had the transition to a new dispensation, we had the good fortune also to meet with the ministers, to meet with government, and to start addressing Muslim issues within government. And those were the opportunities that were created for us to interfaith, of course, started also taking its shape and in supporting the democracy and how we still hold government responsible, but as faith communities. And how do we work together and cooperate? So interfaith, you find many of the institutions in the 90s, many Muslim schools were established. The system just increased phenomenally. And of course, the activities also increase. The students have increased. So Islamic knowledge and thought and people that expanded. If you look in the last 30 years, there's been a huge expansion of all institutions. And I think in the 90s in particular, when we came back, we established school after school. In 1994, 93, we started negotiating with Al-Azhar. 1994, we started Holy Act. We had 6 Al-Azhar international institutes in the country. I was the chairman of the management body nationally.
So when you came back, did the Sheikh Nazim call you guys in?
Yes.
And I don't want to imitate what he sounded like, but you know, I mean, you know, when people like him and Sheikh Najjar spoke, when they walked and when they spoke, you...
Alhamdulillah.
Allah yarhamhum. So you became a DA. Was it a personal decision that this is my new career, I want to do this career? Did you consult, or was it Mashayikh, we need someone? Was it a discussion? Or like how does this happen?
Look, we developed a policy because of my involvement in the politics and I joining the party, etc. The organization had to regulate the activities of its members. So a policy was developed subsequently. And the policy was basically encouraging people under the new dispensation of democracy that yes, you can support the political party of your choice. You decide, as long as they're not opposed to Islam, and you make your contribution. But however, we added further, the president of the organization cannot be political. Later it was changed that those who hold political office cannot be in the executive or in the Imara. So those things were added on.
Why were those added on? Was there a feeling that people were moving, or had people already moved into that direction?
Yes, people were moving. Like Imam Hassan was also a member of parliament at the time. And Sheikh Hamid also later became a member. He became a councillor as well. He became ambassador. So from the
I met him in Riyadh also, visited him in his office.
When he was in
Zala khair, wallah, I just pitched him at the embassy. And I just tell him Muhammadur from South Africa, from Cape Town. Wallah, he told him, let him come up Zala khair. Wallah, I didn't even know the man. Just through, he knew my son, Allah yarhamhum, you know.
No, alhamdulillah. No, he played his role and he was quite active, you know, in the politics.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, there were members that were involved, but the MGC allowed that space. The only thing is that the leadership, they needed to protect. And the policy says that if you're in the leadership, you must not be politically aligned. So you want to keep some neutrality at that level where you can be critical of political parties. What you vote for privately, that's your business. That's your business. Nobody would interfere with that. But as the leader or on the executive, that you should not be aligned to anything. Because how critical can you be if you're aligned?
So how did you join the DA then? As the deputy president at that time?
Because there was no policy.
Oh, real technocrat.
Policies were developed later, but the policies
were you one of the reasons the policies were developed later?
Yes.
I
was part of policy development and I agreed.
No. Were you one of the reasons?
Yes.
Was one of the reasons that you joined the DA that the policy was created?
I think so, because other members were ANC members. And there wasn't a policy on that really.
But when you started it, you had the blessings of the people of the ulama and the senior administrators, senior leadership.
I think there was an understanding that yes, I am in an opposition party. People may not all agree with that party, but those were certain individuals that were aligned to other political parties. But from the general membership, there was no problem. General membership felt that it was fine, that you play your role. And you are still constructive, you are still contributing to the MGC. So at that time, I was working both at the MGC, and I was working within the council. And then when I became member of parliament in 2004, then of course the workload changed.
That was provincial parliament.
Yeah. So I started off in provincial, but it became full-time. So I then stepped down from the position of deputy president.
Was Sheikh Ibrahim the president then?
He was the president at the time.
What was his opinion and take, and with you being in the DA at that time?
I think individuals that are aligned to other parties will have the view on the matter.
In a working relationship, the
working relationship,
how
there was never a problem, because we do our work that we have to do.
We're also one of our mashayikh, and I have the greatest respect for all the mashayikh and our elders.
No,
but we're just discussing for history and for us to understand, we're not
working relationship. I think I enjoy a good relationship with most of our members, and I serve on various committees within the MGC. I was part of the Constitution Committee. I mean, all the time I've been there. I've been serving on education for long. I've been on different delegations internationally, locally, going nationally also to the Ulama Council. So I served the organization in all different capacities. And I was facilitator of conferences, I was facilitator of workshops, I was part of task team. I chaired many task teams on different issues. So my working relationship with my colleagues, I mean, I've enjoyed that space, and I've never tried to mix it with my politics.
But the reverse of that, or the other side of that coin, is it is exactly that makes you extremely attractive to any political party. Like, I would start a political party just to have someone of your credentials within the Muslim community.
Alhamdulillah. People see the value and worth, and I can play a role. Of course, I've now retired from politics, and I've become more a critic and a commentator of politics. So, but at that time, I mean, that was very attractive to the DA. And there must have been good synergy there. I mean, because they were looking for. I mean, all political parties, always looking
for talent, and you provided them with a.
No, alhamdulillah. Not that I wasn't offered opportunities with other parties.
Were you offered other parties? Would you like to? Can you mention them? Talk about them, or
no? I think at the time
I hope it was some of the good parties, not the loser parties. The one man.
No, we're talking about the main parties.
Okay, but in 2004 there was only 2 or 3. It was only the DA, the ANC, and the IFP. So it was.
Alhamdulillah. I think it was a good space, and I think it's anybody that undertakes a task. And I think that is living up to the example of the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إِذَا عَمِلَ أَحَدُكُمْ عَمَلًا فَلْيُتْقِنُهُ. That we must always try to excel in any work that we do. And I think I've tried to keep that as a principle in life. Wherever I serve to the best of my capacity, and try to give to the community more than what they deserve. So that is my philosophy of life. Wherever I am, I try to work hard at what I do.
Playing on words, I heard from people. I did a bit of reading. It's like, what kind of guy is Sheikh Shahid? They said, no, he's a very good administrator. So you mentioned the hadith and you translated the hadith.
Yeah.
Excel.
Yeah.
You sent me your CV in an Excel format, Sheikh. I've never seen a CV in an Excel format. So on my phone, I just saw the first one, but when I opened it, so you had 4 or 5 tabs.
Yeah.
And each tab was meticulously filled.
Alhamdulillah.
Are you that pedantic? You are that pedantic. I was shocked. I even told my colleague, I said, I've never seen a CV in an Excel format. And when the tabs, each of the tabs worked.
Alhamdulillah. Now I try to do things systematically and try to do it efficiently, and also to make it legible and accessible to people, that they can access it easily and it can be used. So,
is from an administrative perspective, being successful as a scholar, as an imam, as a leader in a community, leading your organization, your leadership position in the Democratic Alliance, what are the types of skills that is needed?
No, alhamdulillah, I think from my studies historically, I started off, as I said, very young. 14 years old, I joined the Ikhwaniya with Shahid Esau at the time. Okay. We lived in Lansdowne, and basically we wanted to do something for the youth. And that's where we started out. And then he moved on for his studies overseas. He went to Al Qura to go study. And then I moved on to the MSA and MYM, and I became the Amir of the MSA for the schools. And then, of course, with the Madrasa Shukran Mubin, I was also a secretary and writing for the madrasa and things. So at a young age already, we were busy with administration, organizing the kitabs for the learners at the madrasa, writing up the attendance registers. So at the early age, there was an inclination to organize structures. And then, of course, with my education going further, yes, I went into education. I specialized in education and educational management as well. So yes, we learned systems, and I, of course, got involved also with doing computer science, MCSE, Microsoft certified engineering things that I went to just study because I wanted to learn about things. So I went into MS, the Microsoft suite that you do, what you call international license, ICDL, international license that you get. So I went to study that. I went to as much, and then every single course at City Council, I studied everything. All the courses under CEL, the South African Local Government Association, I studied every course under them. I joined the Democratic Alliance.
Sheikh, you're more valuable than I thought you are.
Oh.
For a political party.
So even the party has structures where you are trained, and there's workshops on your skills development as a councillor. How can you best serve? When you do interviews, you go for TV training, radio training. If you go for writing, how do you write up a report? How do you write questions to Parliament or to legislatures? So you actually go to workshops for training and speaking. I also became a trainer in the institution for training councillors as well. And then same thing with went to Parliament. I studied under Parliament. There was, of course, the aid that is given internationally to Parliament. So I also finished further studies. I did all my undergraduate and postgraduate with UNISA, and I went to Stellenbosch Business School. Then I went to Wits University, and I specialized in, of course, governance and public policy leadership.
How did all of this assist you in your job in Parliament and in the Islamic organization which you lead, which you are a leader in?
Alhamdulillah, the skills that you develop, for instance, in public, I did quite a number of courses, and I specialized in the business school at Wits in governance and public policy and leadership. So with that mindset, it gives structure to what you do and how you think and put things together.
Can you give us an example in the MJC when you found something out of order structurally, and you and a group of people said, let's structure it like this, and now we have something, and examples?
Yeah, I think, look, one of the things that we've done before, it takes time, it evolves also. It's like the schools, Al-Azhar schools. So you get involved and you try to improve on the systems, and also to deal with the school, because there's professional teachers that you're dealing with. So from the MJC, you find the mashayikh who may not have that necessary skill and capacity of what teachers have. So you have to, if you have that background, of course you can add more. And I think this type of relationship is to develop the necessary skills, to create the necessary systems of accountability and transparency, and to have reporting done. So yes, within the MJC, we push very hard the system change, that the minutes are taken properly. The reports are given on a quarterly basis. There's also monthly reports. There's financial reports. And you have to hold the executive to account all the time. Say, where are the reports? We need to study. We need to give answers. You need to explain to us how is money being used. So over time, the systems have increased, that we are now at this stage where it's much more regulated. I'm not going to go into the other issues that developed afterwards, but those were the systems that were brought into the MJC, and also added into the constitution of the MJC. So it was the constitution of old changed quite drastically to what we have currently, where all these reporting lines are being developed and people are held responsible. So
a lot of work has gone into developing the MJC over the last 2.5 decades.
Yes, even the committees that we formed, Yes, there was also policy development, although I would definitely encourage them to have far more policies to regulate activity and also issues within the organization. I find that is still lacking. Except for HR. HR works for employees because within South African environment, that's a highly regulated area of labor. So labor in South Africa, you can't mess about. You got your basic conditions of employment. You got every single policy that governs an employee. So all those things are readily available. But we need to go beyond that to look at organizational policies on all other levels. And I think that is what the organization should be moving towards. And although there's been a number of initiatives, it was never finalized and executed. And I think it's high time that the organization is far more regulated than operating without clear policies in place.
In Conversation with Sheikh Shahid Esau, we'll be back after this.
In Conversation with is proudly sponsored by Africa Cash and Carry, Crown Mines.
In Conversation with Sheikh Shahid Esau. Jazakallah khair, Fadilat al-Sheikh. In the DA, the Palestinian-Israeli issue, it's an issue that's occupied the Muslim world for almost 80 years now. In South Africa, for a long time and up till the time you retired, this issue of whenever the DA's name was mentioned and there was a discussion on Palestine and so forth, your name would also come up every now and then. How do you, first of all, I'm not asking you to defend the DA, but in your understanding, what was the DA's policy on Palestine and Israel? How did you feel about that policy? And let's start that conversation.
I think the policy of the DA is essentially the same policy of the ANC. And that is to the two-state solution policy and to give recognition to both. And of course, the difference lies, of course, in that the political party that determines foreign policy would be the ruling party. So whoever's in charge of the country, they will make the actual foreign policy that governs South Africa. And this is where the ruling party had a different policy, really, to what the rhetoric was about. If you look at the policy itself, it speaks about the two-state solution, etc. However, the political party would say, look, we support Palestine, we do all of that. At the same time, the government of the day, which is the ruling party, but not, they would say that's the ruling party and not the political party. They separate between the two. We find that the bilaterals between Israel and South Africa just continued, whether it was under apartheid or whether under New South Africa. And the relationships was not only terms of economics, it was also intelligence, it was defense.
You were on the I was surprised.
On the portfolio as well.
They trusted the Muslim. They didn't think you were terrorists on having access to our
no,
defense
I'm a South
secrets.
African and I'm a loyal citizen of the country, and I'm there.
But your opinion on this issue, you give credence by the fact that you were on that portfolio committee for a good few years.
Yes,
of defense.
That's correct. I served on that committee for about 7.5 years.
Wow. And so South African bilaterals with Israel under the ANC.
Yes, I mean, just recently, of course, the ANC has spoken about closing the embassy, etc. But the Israelis also consulted, removed the ambassador. They stopped the airlines from traveling between, of course, the trips between Israel and between South Africa. They decided that. South Africa didn't decide that. The other bilaterals, there's no indication that it's been closed down. So business relations are continuing in the form of agriculture, in terms of other, also intelligence. We find that there's been the exchange of information and things that they work together on.
What kind of things? I mean, you don't have to give specifics, this person, that person, or this. Like, what kind of things? Are we chasing terrorists? Is that part of it, looking for Muslim terrorists?
I think that happened at one stage as well in South Africa. As Africa stand accused of having ISIS cells in South Africa. They were...
But South Africa has extradited Muslims already from 97, 98. We extradited Khalfan.
That's correct.
Kenyan Somali.
Kenyan Somali.
I think the USS Cole or the Kenyan. So
That's right.
And then there was the Asvat guy as well. If I'm not correct, there was someone in escort to someone who was extradited at night,
That happened at night.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Those
So,
things
so we do cooperate. I'm digressing a bit, but we
That's what I'm saying, is that South Africa, yes, as the ruling party, it has signed agreements internationally. It has signed whether with countries of cooperation where extradition takes place. There's, of course, the other, agreements that they comply with. And there's a shift in that now. If you look at the world powers today and the shift now to BRICS, and there's also this satisfaction that takes place between parties because of the orientation and, of course, working over the years in a certain environment. And South Africa has been part of that environment and have shifted to this environment from the ruling party side. So what we say is, if you look at the situation of Palestine, there's a difference in the political party approach, and there was the government. The government now, of course, took a stand to say, as a country, we're taking Israel to the ICJ, and yes, for genocide. And we have to applaud them for taking a bold step, because at this moment, what's happening in Palestine, it is totally unacceptable by any standard.
But we did not change our government policy. Our government policy on two-state solution.
No, that didn't change yet. That is still the same. Although under the current circumstances, if I'm looking at what the Israeli government is saying, and even if you look at the people and what the comments are being made, is that no intention to have a two-state solution.
But we're talking internally in terms of articulation, that we're saying the South African government's articulation in our foreign policy.
Correct.
And the DA's articulation in their
Same.
policy. So why is the DA, or why is this issue of the Palestinian-Israeli issue, even before Gaza, even before 7th October, it's an issue that hounds the DA. Does the DA not know how to communicate it? Then I don't know if you did a very good job about it. And others like you, why can't they articulate it?
I think the issue that you have within any political party is that there is when your policy is written, sometimes there's no policy or the policy vacuum. Where you have policy written, it's decided by the party. And of course, we look at portfolios. That particular portfolio would fall under international relations. It wouldn't fall under defense.
Okay.
So if you need to review that, it has to come to a
But as a Muslim constituent, I mean, you in promoting the DA's position on Palestine, it doesn't sound like you did a very good job, given the fact that in the Western Cape there is still so much resistance on the DA on this issue.
Yes, look, there's been, I cannot speak out of the caucus and other things, that of course that is not allowed. Yes, but there's definitely been attempts and discussions at that level. And of course, there's been different public statements that were made over the years, where you, of course, try to influence things. But of course, as I say, the party positions are not determined by one person. And one needs to also understand the dynamics. Within the ANC, the same thing. What they do at a political conference and what goes into government is something else. So the discussions and what you see, the rhetoric on the one and what is actually happening in the ruling party, in the DA, the same. You'll find this situation where, yes, this is the policy that you hold, which cannot be an official policy of government because they're not the government. They are an opposition. But this is their stance or their view on the matter. So I think the problem lies in that when things happen and you have to critically address the matter, whether you have to condemn it, whether you have to speak out against it in one way or the other, I think some instances they were not forthcoming. And that is the criticism of it. If you know something is wrong, and sometimes this is an issue also that one looks at is, if you weigh up, if you stand for humanitarian values and what we call human rights, if you consistently apply that, you shouldn't have a problem. However, you find there's party interests and there's also national interests. And this sometimes trumps the issue of human rights. And this applies not only to the DA, it applies to any political party in any country. For instance, if we're speaking about the current situation of Palestine, right, and as a Muslim community, we would want everybody to support the Palestinians because of this crisis and the genocide going on. We ask the same question when we speak to our government. Did we speak to our government in the same way about the Uyghurs, the Muslims that are persecuted in China? And this is the issue of what is the national interest or the party interest in relation to the issue of human rights. So that is why the problem with democracy and or justice and all these things sometimes become very relative, because there are other interests at play, which sometimes trumps the issue of human rights.
I think on the 9th or the 8th of October,
Yeah.
about 1,500 people were massacred in Darfur.
Yes. What was the
It was
response?
all over social media, probably because of the people I followed. I couldn't see it. It was a film. And of course, we can never ever compare this one's pain to that one's pain and whataboutism. But I say that in the context of South Africa's foreign policy being Africa-driven, and then
Correct.
just affirming what you
I
said.
think this is going to be the challenge for any government, is that you don't want to be in the bad books of certain of your partners that you have in the world, or you have your bilaterals or multilateral relationship with different countries. And if you take a stance against that country, you may suffer then economic consequences.
Will the DA suffer if it takes a more forthright position on Palestine? If the DA, I won't say succumbs, but let's say if the DA changed its position in terms of criticizing Israel, would it cost the DA anything?
I think
We're analyzing now because you've retired.
that will be analyzing the situation. But I think any party that takes a position, and it's a constituency that support that party, or members that support a party that may hold a certain view, yes, it will cost their support in terms of votes, and it may even in support of finance.
You come from the structures of the Western Cape, so if anyone knows the figures and voter constituents and voter numbers, you would know it. So, do you think the Gaza issue in the Western Cape can cost or will cost the DA votes? Analyzing.
No, clearly. I mean, what we've seen happening, the Gaza situation, if you want, I mean, you can't play politics with it. It's
Really?
human lives. Human lives.
Okay,
from that perspective.
Yes.
But if you're playing politics with it, yes, there's a price to pay. So, yes, I've got a problem when people are dying every day and you can't be critical of that situation and to support people in that crisis. Then I personally have a problem with it. So, yes, this situation has been used also by political parties to, of course, garner more votes and support, and to run down other parties that don't hold or didn't speak out against things, or were not open about the policy or position that they've taken. And if in politics, you need to realize that this is the perception that the game is played with. You need to get votes. So if you can convince the electorate out there to change or to support you, or those that are on the fence or not sure where they want to go, there's an opportunity to influence that and for them to support your party and position. And I think politicians should understand that better than other people, because at the end of the day, the vote counts.
So what is the message the DA is sending to Muslim voters?
Well, unfortunately, the situation is that they may disagree at the moment, that is not their position. The position is, yes, there are two-side solution, but with the crisis that you have and the killing that is happening on a daily basis, if you're not being critical of that situation, then you expose yourself.
Do you think voters, is there a voter who thinks, and I say because you have constituents, who says, Gaza is very important, but when I'm voting, I'm looking at my local issues, my national issues, my corruption, etc., etc.
There are those ones as well.
How does that work, in your opinion? Well, what's the probability of this actually of this swinging towards the DA when we come to the voter box? Because you've been in the community for 30 years. If anyone knows what the community thinks, you would know.
No, I think it's important that what happens is that running up to the election, there will be a number of surveys and polls done to assess the mood and also the support for the parties. And clearly, I mean, if you look at what's happening currently in the Western Cape, in particular in Cape Town or the Muslim community, we find it also the main centers like Durban, like Joburg, where there's been lots of activity of protest and march in support of Palestine and solidarity. And that directly impacts on the Muslim community. In the Western Cape, of course, we find that the Muslim community, to a large extent, supported the DA. However, this particular sentiment that is now prevailing will definitely impact on the community. So there will be a loss of votes. However,
to what percent do you read?
that I cannot answer. The polls will have to check the polls on that.
But you've got a feeling of the community, feeling on the ground. If anyone can guess a good number in this country, in this province,
I don't think it's big enough to have a regime change as such. I think that is the discussion that is properly on the ground, that people would like to see a regime change. The issue that you have is, if you look at the by-elections outside Cape Town, then there's not been a huge impact in terms of the Palestinian situation on that. So that wouldn't change the voting pattern. However, at the end of the day, we're dealing a provincial vote and we're dealing with a national vote. So all the votes are counted. And then, of course, we look in terms of provinces and, of course, the percentage that you have, which will determine your share of government. If you have over 51, you become the ruling party. If you have less than 50, you go into coalition. And if the other parties can draw a common coalition that can, of course, form the 51% and you don't reach that, then they become the ruling party. So those are the other politics, which is a serious concern for me, because most of the governments, whether it's municipal in the future, the provincial, national, we're going to have coalitions. And coalitions are in South Africa is not very stable. Unlike when they say, no, we're going to Europe, we're going to see how they operate and how they function effectively and things. Yes, you can go to the different countries, go learn from that experience. But what we've seen over the recent years,
just look at Israel and they'll see what happens and Iraq when you have coalition problems.
Yes, yes, it is a big worry, because I've seen now with the Gauteng legislature, if you look at the coalitions that's there, it's been extremely negative impact on the community at large and the citizens. So service delivery have been seriously impacted. You're
sounding a little bit like Helen Zille. In that, don't vote for the small parties.
No, I'm not saying
we don't want to go to coalitions. Vote for the big parties.
No, I'm saying if the coalitions can be stable and people are mature enough, the problem we have is horse trading.
But it's always horse trading. That's politics, isn't it?
Yeah, but sometimes it's beyond reason. And then you find that, yes, you form a coalition, you try to govern, it runs for a few months or for a year or two, and suddenly your coalition partner decides, no, I'm not happy with this or that, I pull out, the government collapses, and another coalition must be formed.
Is this just part of our democracy that we need to learn how to get
Yes, it is, but
of
unfortunately,
course,
it comes at the expense of the citizen.
I don't want to get into numbers, but I have to ask, do you have any credible information as to the numbers of Muslims in South Africa and the Muslims in the province?
No, there's no accurate information that we have on it. There's, of course, we have, from our experience that we have, and in the community, yes, we project that now to be over 2 million, and also with so many foreigners.
Nationally?
Nationally, it will be over 2 million, and of course, it will increase even more. It can go even up to 3 million with all the foreigners that we have, and there are many Muslims from different countries that are here, whether it's from Somalia, whether it's from Malawi, from Tanzania.
This is something that all of the ulama and community workers have spoken to. It's this issue of foreigners in South Africa. Where do you view Islam in South Africa in terms of the critical mass that has an identity now, traditional Muslims? Do you see integration? Do you see just diversity without integration? Because a lot of these entities have developed their own structures.
Correct.
And what is their appetite for politics as they get absorbed?
Unfortunately, we have that phenomenon which we see in the UK as well. We have a Indian, we have a historically Indian community that's been here for more than 50 years. But you find, like, for instance, the Bangladeshi community, which is also Indian in origin, they also have their own masjid and they've got their own madrasa. You'll find the Somalis have a center that they operate, completely buildings they buy out. They got the masjid, 2 masjids. They got their own school that they're running. So to a large extent, not full integration. However, you'll find some of those that do not stay in that area. They send their children to our normal schools and the Muslim schools. So there's that integration. Marriages, yes, I find that there's marriage with our local people that's taking place from the different nationalities. But yes, we'd like to see more integration. The children that are, of course, born in South Africa are South Africans. So they grow up as South Africans, although their parents may be from different countries. So yes, going forward, I think there's also been a very positive contribution in terms of da'wah, that many of these foreign communities that go out to our rural areas where they start their business, where they work with the community, they marry with the community, and they spread Islam.
But there's also reputational issues, because a lot of these people,
Yes.
these people sound so derogatory, but I mean, a lot of our brothers and sisters who come from these Muslim countries, whenever there's, every now and then we hear fights, violence. Sometimes they are victims, but there's also issues coming off, the expired food, the illegal stores, etc., etc., etc. And I picked up on social media, I can't say it's a scientific trend, but you pick up that many times there's a backlash, the response from black nationalists to these events.
Is the xenophobia, that's real.
But then it also comes over, when I say selfishly, to us people who've been here all along, and I've got nothing to do with the spaza shop. Yeah. Now we find that the backlash goes across. If you
look, I've been, when I was the Speaker of Parliament, I used to interact with all the different delegations from different communities and foreign communities, and also to address local community and foreign communities where they live together to reconcile. So yes,
what is the strategies that you would propose to reconcile?
Look, essentially the concern the local people have, and I think it latches also onto unemployment and the benefits. Now, South Africa's policy, but that's a national government policy. When people enter the country, they also have access to our health and education, etc. That is guaranteed to them. So that Africa is not denied, and they haven't changed that policy. So local people, there's a perception that you're taking away our jobs. We don't get food, or we live in poverty because of you. That is not always true. The problem that you have is also our own people in South Africa use foreign labor as cheap labor, which is a problem. If you meet the same standards, then of course, and then you got also work ethic. Some communities complain that our local people may not be working as hard as the foreign workers are working. So you have that issue. So I think one has to also understand that the foreigners that come in, that set up shops, that started business, they actually employ local people to work in their business as well. So they do create also job opportunities. So I think we need to find each other. I mean, many people have come to make South Africa their home. Their children grow up as South Africans. And we need to find some, a reconciliation and synergy between our communities.
Is this something that the MJC and UUCSA and these bodies are talking about formally, officially in their meetings?
I know the MJC is
recognizing that there's a future in which these issues have to be considered. And
no, absolutely. And from MJC, we've been actively involved with the xenophobia issue, and also try to support the what we would say social cohesion and living together, coexistence of communities.
I mean, reactively, or are we saying this is what's happening in the future, what can we do in the future? Or are we responding to xenophobic
initially,
attacks?
I think we did respond to xenophobic attacks that took place, and a number of Somalis were also killed.
Yes.
But wasn't only local people. There were also other Somalis involved for different reasons that they killed their own people. So that, of course, is police and intelligence matters. However, the issue that we are saying is that we acknowledge that there is a contribution they can make. And there are many foreigners that are doing a good job in the country. So when we speak to them, we also advise them that, yes, if you're part of a community, what is your actual contribution? You make money out of this community. You actually profit from this community. They support your business. What do you give back?
Do you tell them they must be legal?
Absolutely.
Is that the first thing you tell them?
I come from a government side, and the first thing is that your permit should be in order, that you should be legal in the country. I would not support, if you're an alien and you came across the borders illegally, then you need to go register, because that creates a huge problem. Even when it's there, when somebody dies and there is no document to certify that the person is from this country, or his name and his details, that creates a huge problem. So yes, from myself, from my background that I come, I will never encourage people to be illegal.
And the structures, like Muslim structures, formal structures, are they aware? Is this part of what they ensure or try to practice in
No, the embassy has always been part of that and engaging, and also to encourage them to contribute to the communities. To work
but illegal?
Not illegal.
No, to be legal.
They
must first...
We will only comply with legal status. We will not accommodate the illegal. That is unacceptable.
Has being part, or to what extent has being part of the DA had a cost on your reputation? And I'll tell you, a few months ago, maybe at the end of last year, you were running for president of the ANC. Oh, sorry. You were running for president of the MJC.
Yeah.
Correct. I saw many disparaging and venomous comments about you on social media, but all of them referred to you as, I'm sure you saw them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were described as a Zionist, but it was in the context of a Zionist DNA, a DA supporting a Zionist DA, puppet, etc., etc., etc. First of all, how does that make you feel? Do you still get upset by it? Are you hurt by it still, or is like like the normal, like our average politicians who don't care about it? But and what damage did that do to you in the community? And how do you respond to those?
Those people that work...
I can read the SMSs from my phone.
No, I know. I'm quite aware, but I know that's been there. There's, of course, these smear campaigns that happen. People do know that I have retired from politics in 2019. I have not participated in any political platform. And so that is known out in the community. But yes, there are those people that are malicious and want to use old photos and use... some past event that maybe you have been part of or so, and try to use that to smear the campaign and to affect. Because there's also political allegiances that are even within our Muslim community and even in the MGC. So people with certain political alliances will also drive a certain...
Are you still politically aligned, sympathetic? And I'm not asking a judgmental, we're just trying to understand to the DA and its policies and so forth.
No, I think
did you still see
I'm reached a stage now that I have retired and I'm critical of all parties. That is my view, and I can comment it. I can say what I want.
So you didn't retire from being a politician. That was a very politician answer.
I think it's only fair that look, I am not a member that has to subscribe to anything. So if I have to be critical, and if somebody asks my advice from different parties, I would give my advice from my experience that I have over the years.
In a few minutes, what was it like working in there? What was it like working with Helen Zille? There's many different opinions and descriptions about what was she as a colleague, as a leader. We also, I mean, there's also the media remarks about when you were removed from speaker and eventually came to national. I don't want to delve into that, but what was the journey like? And I'll tell you why. When I look at your trajectory of your career, you started out when the DA, I don't know if it was the DA when you started out even.
DP.
It was the DP, right? And Helen Zille, with the leadership, took that party to 20%.
Correct.
You were part of that process.
Correct.
So irrespective, if for argument's sake we say that there was a fallout, etc., that must have been a very interesting journey to build a party from 2% or even less up to where it was eventually 20%.
No, certainly. It took a lot of effort, but I say it was very structured. Yes, the party, of course, at the time when I was involved, part of the development was that you have to go for training. Everybody had to be trained. Everybody had to go to workshops. Everybody. So that was, and it still is. I believe that is part of it, where youth leadership is developed. People get involved in programs for a year or so, and then they put into different environments to actually apply that. So yes, I think training is important.
Racism in the DA?
Well, there's
and we look at the people who left, the senior leaders who left. This is also something that comes...
People have left for different reasons. Look, I wasn't part of any of that, and people will have their claims. And one of the claims that people make would be that they were discriminated against. My own experience is that I've had a very good relationship. And as I said, the positions that I've held in the party, I didn't go lobby for that position. Those positions, people came out to support and to say that, yes, we are nominating you, we are supporting you. So I've had a very good relationship with Helen Zille, for instance, when she was also the premier and I was the speaker in the Western Cape. Of course, she was the mayor before in 2006, and when the city was taken over. And by that time, I already joined the provincial parliament, because I left for provincial parliament in 2004. Before that, the DA was in control for a short period, and it was taken over by the ANC, the city of Cape Town. And then 2006, there was a changeover again, and the city since that time went under the DA. So yes, I think the approach, Alhamdulillah, had a very good relationship, working relationship with people. And of course, I cannot speak anything in terms of the personality that you refer to, of any negative with myself at all. Okay. We had a very good working relationship. I was running parliament and she was running government. And it was respected, mutually respected. And that is what is, in terms of the law, in terms of how you govern, that is what is expected to be done. So alhamdulillah, I think the experience was a very good experience. And the learning, of course, you got to learn a lot of things. Whether it's a local legislature, which is your city council, or whether it's province, which is a legislature, where you deal with more laws. And national, of course, most of your time you spend with criticizing and looking at laws and legislation, and of course a budget and the reports on actual service delivery. So yes, it operates slightly different, but the skill set is to be, of course, highly critical of all the service delivery that takes place in the country, and to be there, to be available, to be present, to go see that things actually happen. And I think that is our responsibility as representatives of the people, that we ensure that service delivery takes place to the people. And sometimes, yes, it's on books, but it's actually not delivered.
What's the health of the institution that you currently a leader in, the MJC? What is the health of the MJC?
Well, I think
in terms of leading Islam in the Western Cape. I mean, what are the big challenges ahead for Islam and Muslims in the Western Cape, and the MJC being a leading organization in that? I think that is exactly what I'm saying. What are the challenges ahead of Islam and Muslims?
There will be local and national issues. National issues, we know, as I spoke about, Muslim personal law will be still an issue. The MJC is part of the umbrella body where they contribute in terms of that. That has not been finalized and resolved as such. Locally, I think, yes, there is a space or a vacuum that still needs to overcome. For instance, the administration of masajid, which is also an area where you have lots of contestation and also controversy between committees and imams and the community and things. That's an area that needs to, we need to impact on.
Is funding a big part of that?
Funding is a big part of it.
What causes those
yes.
types of controversies?
Yeah, so I think also the skill set, when people are voted into positions, they not necessarily have the skill set to do it. So you need to create a permanent support structure of training and development for committees to be able to run a masajid and administer it properly.
Do organizations in South Africa talk to each other? Like, for example, would the MJC talk to Jamaatul Ulama and say, how do you assist, or talk to the Sunni Ulama Council and say, how do you do this or do that?
We do have exchanges. I think there's been some initiatives with the Zakah Fund, for instance, and there's also some other organizations, for instance, the lawyers, and so would come and offer some causes. But I think it should be on a more permanent basis. The other, of course, issue is also the skill sets of ulama that we need to improve on as well. Ulama come with a certain skill set, and the community and its issues, they require more than that. So I think we should be open to that type of training that takes place.
What are the unique skill sets that you believe ulama come with that is unique to them, and what are the most and which skill sets are they most lacking in terms of their job that they need assistance with?
Look, it also depends on the background of the individual, Muhammad Noor. If you look at the person and his training, what he had before, and his training that he did as an alim or a scholar, what he studied. So that training doesn't necessarily prepare you to deal with community issues. For instance, you have also issues of reconciliation, arbitration, mediation, and things, which requires Yes, you can say, yes, in the Sunnah, yes, we must sulh al-khair, and you can speak about those things. But how do you deal with it within a South African context as well? There's also legal implications. If you do certain things and you don't do it properly, there can be litigation, there can be other side effects to it. So that environment, also marital counseling, yes, the assumption is made because you know your deen and therefore you can give the right advice. In some instance, we found that the advice that was given was not adequate or was lacking, or it was not considerate of other factors. So I think the skill set that any learned person has will have to be extended to incorporate other issues to understand the situation. That's why I think Allah Rahman Sheikh Nazim said, ja, jy is nou 'n alim, jy kom uit Medina, jy kom uit Cairo, jy kom van oral af, jy het nou 'n lekker degree, maar het jy 'n CA degree? CA meaning Cape Town registration, Cape Town. Do you know the local situation? Do you understand the situation? And I think this is what we probably need to look at is, if you want to be relevant and effective, then you need to understand your context and the requirements of that context. So that needs to evolve as well. It cannot be assumed that any person that just went to learn the deen, that he therefore has the skill set. That is not possible.
Sheikh Shahid, you are 62? 62,
mashallah.
62, Allah give you a long life and health, inshallah. You're still very young in terms of what's happening in this country, in terms of the average age of leadership. You can't tell me you're retired in your armchair critic and a consultant. What's ahead of you? Give us some secrets. You must be. Are you going back into politics?
Not at this stage that I know of. I have, as I said, retired from politics. I've become a commentator.
Would you go if the opportunities we were called? Would you consider it?
Not at this stage. I've already registered to pursue to do my research and thesis. So I've officially already joined UUCSA to write a thesis, and I will focus on my academia. I've also
what's your thesis about?
Well, I haven't finalized it, but the issue will be probably an area of awqaf that we're looking at as sustainability, and how Islam developed this institutionalized awqaf to sustain communities. And of course, we have a history of Islam, and to look at it in terms of our South African situation. And one of the models that has been extremely successful is the model in Singapore. I've been there twice or thrice in Singapore already, and they have changed the fatwas pertaining for the awqaf, etc. And it's been very dynamic. So one has to then test that. Would that fatwas be applicable in South Africa? Can that be tested in the same way? It's
very deep.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you can still find time
to
lead a political life. Are you sure?
No, politics is, yes, we will always be part of the country and our people and what's happening in the country, and to give guidance. So yes, that is the academia that I'd like to focus on at the moment. But I've been part of other projects as well. I still work with the Halal Trust as such. I'm the chairperson of the Halal Trust, and we've driven a whole transformation in the Halal Trust that has now come to a head where we are now looking at the ISO 176.
Do these people who call you Zionist know that you're the head of the Halal Trust? Well, I guess it's Ahl al-Kitab now, isn't it then?
Yeah, look, people can make comments. It doesn't mean it is justified or well-founded at all. People make sometimes, wild comments and things without thinking. Yes, we're used to that, where people just make their comments for whatever reasons they have, not necessarily knowing the actual situation. My working relationship with people and the people on the ground is very different to those wild comments that are made in the media or put on social media that are very malicious. And I don't pay much attention because I know my community, I know the people I work with, and those are the people that will speak for me. I don't have to speak for myself. People know what I do. So yes, we are looking also at, I do work with the Indonesian government as well on projects. And we have, then I have to liaise with the South African government as well. And one of the projects that we want is a cultural center that will be set up in the Kramat. that will be funded by the Goa government via the national government. We have all the spheres of government involved in the project, local government, provincial and national in South Africa. So yes, it's very exciting to work with the international delegations that come into the country and to assist. I also, as a just matter of course, if people come to the country and they'd like to invest in the country or they're looking for opportunities, I will certainly advise them and refer them and to encourage them to invest, because that's part of my responsibility as a South African.
Do you see South Africa, and we're heading in elections, there's a lot of talk about the stability of the country and so forth. What do you see the future for South Africa in the short term and medium term? Stability, the economy.
Well, the economy is a worry.
It's a worry. Are you confident in the resilience of our government structures to maintain order and maintain a certain level of security? I mean, riots, protests that comes and goes. Anything above that, do you believe? Do you have confidence in the resilience of the government?
I think South Africa has committed itself to that, and they have managed many a situation. Yes, so to a large extent, yes, the country is quite safe that we're looking at. It comes with its challenges in certain areas that things happen, and we need to deal with it effectively when it happens. We cannot predict these things. Sometimes, yes, there's an indication, early indications that things will happen, which is detrimental to the country. So to a large extent, yes, South Africa responds to those issues in the best interest of the country. We have our challenges. As I say, the economy is not growing as it should. That's why I encourage people to invest in the country, to open up business in the country, to create jobs in the country. Those are real things. To speak about it and to criticize is one thing, but to actually encourage people to start things here and to employ people here, I think that's more constructive. So I think I would like to be part of that. Whether you want to invest in the Western Cape or whether you want to go to Mpumalanga or you want to go to the Northern Province, I will make contact with people there and say, look, there's an interested party in this and that. Are you able to assist? Can we facilitate? Can we help? Because it's good for our country. So even on exports, I encourage people that they get products that meet international requirements. If it's halal products, if it's not, can you make it halal? There's a great market out there that runs into trillions of dollars every year. If you have one product that can get into that Muslim market and that demand, overnight you will flourish. So this is the type of discussion that we should have with our local people, local business, to grow their footprint locally and internationally in the markets, and thereby also creating opportunities for our local people. So those are real things that one can do. Yes, it's fine to criticize the government. Yes, we're saying there is corruption. We say there is stealing and theft taking place and abuse and all. Those things must be dealt with. We have to continuously criticize that and be critical of government and whoever it is, no matter who it is, whichever party it is, we have to be critical. However, at the same time, you cannot only leave it to criticism. You have to also do things for your community. And I think the one is our own community needs to be developed, and I like to be part of that. Wherever there's an opportunity to help, I help. When there's people coming to the country to support, I will be there to facilitate. Alhamdulillah, yes, there are many times that I do get the opportunity to consult and to liaise with business from abroad and to find local partners. So if that can be achieved, alhamdulillah, or local people that need some help or to be shown in the right direction, there's some funding available for you to grow your business, I will gladly go and find out and give you the contact to start and get on with your business and to develop it to if it's a small business, try to make it a medium-sized business and to grow your business. Because Islamically also, the more prosperous you are in your business, the more zakah you can pay, the more sadaqah you can give. So it's all those impacts that we need to look at when you try to develop and grow people and grow institutions. So alhamdulillah, I may not be in government or in parliament officially anymore, but I believe I am an ambassador for my country and to serve my people.
Sheikh Shahid Esau, Jazakallah khairan. An ambassador to serve your country and your people. It has been a pleasure and an honor having you with us.
Barakallah feek.
Barakallah feek. Jazakallah khairan. This is Sheikh Shahid Esau having conversation with us. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
In Conversation With is proudly sponsored by Africa Cash and Carry, Crown Mines, and shot on location at Cortuba Convention Center.